Housing unaffordability is a topic that's been all over the media and YouTube. You may have even heard friends or family complain about the high cost of rent or how difficult it is to find a home these days, even for those who have quote-unquote good jobs. According to the New York Times, the average American renter now pays 30% of their total income on rent, up from 25% in 2020. It's even worse in coastal cities. The average renter pays 45% of their total income on rent in Los Angeles and 40% in New York City. With these trends pricing young Americans out of the rental and housing markets, so-called co-living companies have crafted a way to profit off this crisis. This leads me to my first question. What are co-living spaces? Co-living spaces are non-traditional living arrangements where one person rents a room inside an apartment with multiple rooms. Unlike a traditional roommate situation, inhabitants rent rooms independent of each other. Co-living spaces typically market towards younger renters inside densely populated areas, where renting a studio or one bedroom may be too expensive for someone with an entry-level salary. To try and look closer into what these spaces have to offer, let's visit a website from a co-living company. But first, if you're enjoying this content, please consider subscribing to my channel. I want to reach 1,000 subscribers before the end of 2023, and getting there would make my year. Also, consider liking this video so that YouTube can recommend similar content to you in the future. Okay, back to the video. Let's check this one out from a company that's been popping up all over Los Angeles. The website looks nice and the spaces look top-notch. They have flexible leases, parking on site, it's fully furnished, and for $1,288, this seems like the best deal in town. On any other website, this would surely be a scam. Let's click on this option to see what else they have. Wow, looks great. But wait, 5 bedrooms for one apartment? That's a lot of people for one kitchen. And where's the advertised price of $1,288? The cheapest option is now $1,480. I guess someone made a mistake. Let's just keep looking. $50 credit for utilities, okay. That can lead to issues if roommates have different spaces, but whatever. More great pictures of the common spaces. They also claim it's cheaper than living on your own, which, for having 4 roommates, I would sure hope so. Okay, well let's look at the Google reviews for this building. Oof, 2.7 stars? Not great. Let's see what the reviewers have to say. Seems like she had a great experience. But this person walked into a dirty room and can't get her security deposit back. Looks like this person is upset that his room doesn't have a lock despite living with a bunch of strangers. This other person claims the building is cheaply made. This other guy had his shower dismantled without notice. Apparently the cleaning service is really bad, and so on and so forth. Alright, well that's just one building. It may not be a representation of the industry as a whole, but at least we have a taste of what people have to say about their experience with co-living. This leads to the first issue. Co-living companies don't see shared spaces as a way to solve the housing crisis. They view it as a way to extract more money out of real estate than they ever could before by squeezing ever more people into ever smaller spaces. For example, let's look at this rental property I drove by a few days ago. $1,200 per bedroom in a 12-bedroom house. That means the co-living company generates $14,400 in rental revenue per month. Keep that number in mind. Now, let's look at a similar property in the same area, but without the co-living aspect. You can see how much less a house rents for when it's not divided by the room. Let's check this one out. It seems spacious. 7 bedrooms. It's easy to see how a company can add a few more rooms to the pre-existing space by making rooms smaller, squeeze more people in, and take an additional $4,400 per month from the property. It's no wonder companies are jumping on this co-living bandwagon, but the methods they use are questionable. This leads me to my next point, which is the idea of co-living in practice. Living with strangers. Let's think about the reality of living with strangers. It's not a new idea. If you've ever had roommates in college, or even later in life when moving to a new city on your own, you'll know that roommates can actually be a nice way of saving money and making personal connections in your community. But co-living spaces are different from this in 2 major ways. The first is that roommates in co-living spaces come and go at random during different time patterns. Someone may move in the first room at the beginning of the year and stay for 3 months. The second roommate may move in mid-year and stay for 6 months. The third roommate will move in sometimes towards the end of the year and stay for just 2 months. Maybe someone along the line signs the lease for a full year. You get the point. The introduction of roommates at different times and for different lengths of time makes it difficult for personal connections to develop. In a typical roommate setup, all roommates move in around the same time, say during the beginning of the semester, and stay until the end of the school year. You may have 1 or 2 new roommates come in during the year, but for the most part, the people you live with remain the same for long enough so that at the very least you get comfortable and feel safe around them. In a co-living space, people come in and out Airbnb style, which makes it difficult to create a sense of community. Second, co-living spaces take away the choice of who you room with. Not knowing who your new potential roommate may be It takes away a sense of comfort, not to mention, you'll likely be paired with someone whom you have nothing in common with. Now, that's not to say that people from different walks of life can't coexist and maybe even develop close relationships, but the commonality of, say, being in college or being new in town is taken away, removing a bridge that's used when trying to relate to a stranger and create new relationships. It's clear that co-living is less of a community and more of a situation where you'll be left wondering who the next stranger you'll live with will be and hoping you don't get the next crazy person. Mismanagement. The third problem with the reality of co-living is a mismanagement that takes place in these rental spaces. This new rental concept is being deployed by relatively new property management startups that have little experience dealing with tenant concerns or the nuances of keeping up with rental properties like handling repairs and rearranging roommates when conflicts arise. An article from the Daily Beast interviewed tenants from one of these co-living companies. Some of the complaints include violent roommates, unsanitary living conditions, unresponsive management, endless random fees, and broken locks. In an effort to get a first-hand look into some of these issues, I decided to interview someone who's been living in a co-living space here in Los Angeles for almost 2 years.
That person is me.
What led you to move into a co-living space?
I initially moved into a co-living space for a couple of different reasons. I was a full-time student. I didn't have a job. I was moving back to Los Angeles after living with my parents for a couple of months during the pandemic. And I was having a really hard time to find a place to live for a variety of different reasons. Number one, most apartment buildings here in Los Angeles don't accept a co-signer. The building that I'm in now does. So my dad was able to co-sign the lease for me when he really wasn't able to do that for pretty much any other building. Also, again, I was a full-time student, so I was unemployed. I didn't have proof of income because I didn't have any. So finding a place to live just made it really, really difficult. And even living on campus wasn't as easy as it sounds because it was just as expensive, if not more, than renting a regular apartment here in Los Angeles. I also enjoy the neighborhood that I was in. So for this price that I'm paying, anything else at this price range was going to be in a much worse neighborhood. And basically this was the best option for me in terms of finding a neighborhood that I felt safe in, finding a neighborhood that was walkable and close to shops and restaurants. And also the building looked really nice. I mean, it was a brand new building when I moved in. Nobody had lived in my room before. The common spaces were beautiful. And it was just kind of an easy decision because it felt like it was safe. There were 2 gates at the front, so I didn't really have to worry too much about, theft or things getting stolen like mail, which I had an issue with at my previous building. I basically just felt like it was, for the money, a good value, and I wasn't really able to find any other options even close to this.
What have been the pros of living in a shared space?
I kind of mentioned some of the pros of living in a co-living space during my first question, but I would say that, again, for the money that you're paying, you're getting a lot of amenities. You're getting in-unit washer and dryers, which are typically not something you're going to get at this price point. I was able to get parking, which again, it's hard to find an apartment with a parking spot in Los Angeles for anything less than $2,000 a month. The common spaces were really nice. The building itself was really nice. I think in Los Angeles, a lot of the buildings here, anything under $2,000, so really anything under $2,500 a month, you're looking at a lot of old buildings, a lot of dilapidated buildings that, they leave much to be desired in the space of, just how you're living in the atmosphere. You're living in these really old buildings, which sometimes can just kind of suck the energy out of the room. Because again, you're having to deal with things that don't work. You're having to deal with grimy floors and grimy walls, and it's hard to make it look nice. When it's a brand new building, it just like almost anything will look nice. So the common spaces were obviously a big draw for me. The in-unit laundry, the fact that it was a new building, the fact that it was a great neighborhood for the price. Those were some of the things that drew me in.
What has been the most difficult part of living in a shared space?
There's been a couple of different reasons why living in a co-shared space has been difficult. The number one reason has really been because I've had about 14 different roommates since I've lived here, and it's been less than 2 years. That's a lot of people. Now, these people go through a background check, so for the most part, they're not going to be like drug dealers or anything like that, but it's still a lot of people that, quite frankly, like some of them I got to know somewhat well, but some of them just kind of come and go. They're not very friendly and they're just not trying to be bothered. So, they're coming in for 3 months and then they're gone. So it's kind of hard to keep up with who lives here, who's just visiting. You see sometimes people coming in and out of the door. You don't know if it's somebody's friend or if it's somebody that just moved in. The company that manages the space doesn't tell you when somebody's moving in. They just kind of show up randomly. There's also a lot of people that come in and out, like maintenance, and there's a lot of people that come in and out like leasing specialists. There's almost at least one person here every single day, like showing the building. So it's not a very private environment. Again, outside of your room, like it's very, very communal and very sort of like it's high foot traffic. So there's a lot of people moving in and out pretty much all the time. And it does make it difficult to kind of have that peace, because you're waking up in the morning and then you're already hearing like so much commotion like right outside of your door. And this is a building where, just like any other new building in the US, like it's kind of made out of cardboard. So you hear everything through the wall. So it's not very private. So the number one thing is definitely, again, having so many people living here is just kind of chaotic. Number two, at the beginning, we did have a lot of maintenance issues. For example, there was a period of about 2 months where our fridge was broken, and basically we didn't have a fridge for 2 months. There's been things like that with other appliances like washer and dryer, like dishwasher. There was a point where I just kind of gave up trying to get them to fix things, because even when they would come out, they wouldn't really fix it. So that has been another thing that, was difficult. I will say it's gotten better. The parking lot, with so many people living in one building, and this is a building that's 16 units. So the parking lot isn't very big, but for 16 units and about 6 people living in each unit, I mean, that's what, like 72 people, more than that, I think. So it's just a lot of people in one small space. So it's chaotic. The parking lot ended up being very chaotic. At the beginning of my time here, we had like a shared platform. It was like a chat. It was like a building chat where everybody just it was meant to build a community, but really what ended up happening were people were just complaining about each other all the time. People were getting into fights online on these chats. People were threatening other people if, they were making too much noise. There were all sorts of conflicts in the chat. So that chat was eventually taken away. But there were definitely some mismanagement issues going on where the management here just didn't really handle kind of the tenants very well, and just were very uncoordinated, and it just led to a lot of chaos and a lot of upset tenants and just a lot of drama in general. Those would be kind of the main negative things, I would say. Again, the maintenance has gotten a lot better. I think the management, although they still have a lot to work on, they've improved in their response time. You don't have appliances broken for months at a time anymore. And generally, I think they're putting a little bit more effort into kind of trying to keep up the building, but you can still tell how, even though it's been less than 2 years that this building has been open, it's already looking really not dilapidated, but it's starting to look like it has a lot of wear and tear, even though it's really not that old of a building. So the maintenance is definitely just at an overall level, it's definitely lacking. So those are some of the negatives of living in a co-share space. And I do understand that, this may not be intended for long-term stays. This may be more so intended for people who, they just moved into town and they want to stay for 3 months and then they want to move away. But just something to keep in mind, if you are considering living here. But yeah, I would say those are the main negatives of living in a co-shared space, at least from my experience.
Now that we've heard about some of the aspects of co-living spaces, let's look at different ideas of how co-living can be implemented more effectively. I want to present realistic and practical methods that have the potential to make co-living better for tenants. The first is simply fixing some of the issues talked about in this video, centralizing property support to an on-site property manager to better address maintenance requests, streamlining communication efforts so that urgent emails don't fall through the cracks when serious issues arise, encouraging camaraderie between roommates in the same units by sponsoring weekly or monthly dinners so that roommates can get to know each other better, and streamlining the leasing process away from mismatched leasing periods and into leasing arrangements that correlate between roommates in the same unit so that they get a chance to get to know each other. Second, co-living companies need to understand that the more people that live in a unit, the more potential for conflicts to arise. In my opinion, 4 people per unit should be the maximum. Any more than that and you start running into issues with people not getting a time window to use the kitchen, especially during busy times like dinner, get a chance to sit on the living room couch, get some rest from people constantly coming in and out of the unit at different times, dealing with different opinions on what temperature the thermostat needs to be in, etc. Remember, these are complete strangers you'll be living with. It's not your family or even a close friend. The constant rotation of roommates doesn't help to build comfort either, so 4 people per unit should be the max. Third, organizing community events like cookouts, movie nights, yoga classes, and holiday events that encourage tenants to participate should be set up. This helps to foster a sense of community within the building. Some co-living companies claim to do this already, but a closer look reveals that these events are half-assed at best. More capital needs to be allocated towards community building events that actually encourage people to participate. Find out about your tenants' interests. Offer events that cater to local food tastes. Make sure those events are assembled by a member of the building support team so that tenants get to know the people that run the building. My last point is that co-living companies need to make co-living more humane. Right now, it's blatantly obvious how profit-driven these setups are. There's no effort in trying to hide the fact that the only reason these co-living companies are in the business is to make more money. I'm aware that the main objective of any business is to make money, but most businesses, I like to think, care about their customers' well-being. They build rapport and trust with customers to create a long-lasting impact on the community. Co-living companies make it clear they don't care about tenants or their needs. They simply view us as another paycheck at the start of the month. Our complaints and suggestions go unheard. Property managers are quick to fill empty rooms, but slow to address tenant concerns. Management's attitude towards tenants is one of arrogance and disregard. They answer our concerns only when doing so is absolutely necessary to keep them out of trouble with local authorities and to avoid legal disputes. They simply don't care about tenants' well-being. Well, at least in my view. So that's it. That's the video. Do you agree with any of my points? Have you ever considered a co-living space? Tell me what your experience was like down in the comments. I'm hoping to reach 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year, so please consider subscribing if you enjoyed content like this. Also, consider liking this video so that YouTube can recommend similar content to you in the future. Feel free to leave any video suggestions down in the comments as well. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you on my next video. Bye!